There are many things that can break a marriage, many ways we can sabotage the relationship, and many different ways to try and fix it. Today, I'm going to talk about a different way of thinking. This is unique and it's a new share for me, so bear with me. What I'm going to share is so simple that you will think I'm probably nuts, ignorant, and don't know what I'm talking about. But I'm going to stand my ground because this idea I'm going to share may be just the thing you need to hear. And it works for me and many other couples who have developed this understanding. Couples are torn apart by themselves. It's no one else's fault. Not the in laws, not the children, not the career, nothing else. It's the two people in the room. What these people are thinking or not thinking, and who they are being or not being, is how the relationship is created. In my book, The Inner Work of Love 10 Understandings for Lasting Relationships, in chapter 3, I write that in relationships, we often bring not just our love and affection, but also our confusion, our roles, our insecurities, and even our borrowed beliefs about who we're supposed to be. And if we aren't clear on our identity, we may unconsciously seek to find ourselves in our partner, an impossible task or ask that leads to frustration on both sides. Also, we will most likely lead from ego, non conscious thinking, and a lower conscious version of ourselves. I wrote this as an introduction to the idea that our identity, in parentheses, I say who we believe we are at our core, and our inner knowing, which is our wisdom, make a difference in how we show up in our relationships. The truth is, sometimes people get married when they shouldn't. I always say it takes at least three things to have a good marriage. The first is a deep friendship. The second is chemistry. And the third is shared values. And there are other things that help, like being willing to be influenced by your partner and repairing conflict in a healthy way. But many people get married and are missing one of these very important things. And what happens in an immature relationship is that the lower brain begins to take over. And without a strong identity core and grounded spirit, negative patterns often flourish and ultimately destroy what might be a decent relationship. Here's where people tend to go when they aren't happy. They blame their partner, they criticize, they keep score, and perhaps most commonly, they look for a label. You know, we've become a culture of amateur psychologists. We look at our partners through the lens of attachment theory, deciding how they are avoidant while we are anxious. We study the Enneagram and decide, well, of course we're fighting. I'm a 4 and he's an 8. Now, these tools aren't bad and often they can be helpful, but they often give us a more sophisticated way to stay stuck. We use them to justify our unhappiness or to manage our partner. We treat our relationship like a math equation that needs solving rather than a living, breathing experience. Also, this doesn't mean that your communication isn't suffering. It may be. But what if the problem isn't your attachment style? What if the problem is simply that you don't understand where your feelings are coming from? A man by the name of Sydney Banks uncovered a way to look at our human universe that is so simple, it's often overlooked. He came up with this concept of the three principles of mind, thought, and consciousness. Thought is the power to create our individual reality. Consciousness is the ability to be aware of that reality. And mind is the universal energy or intelligence behind life. I call this the infinite intelligence of the universe, of which I am made. Some people might call it God. In a marriage, we aren't actually reacting to our spouse. We are reacting to our own thought generated reality of our spouse. Think about it. Most relationship blowups happen because we take our low mood thinking seriously. Low mood thinking. When our state of consciousness drops, our thoughts become urgent, heavy, and pessimistic. Traditional advice says, communicate your feelings. Sit down and talk about why you're angry. And the three principles approach says, wait, you're in a low mood. Your thinking is currently distorted. This is the worst possible time to work on your relationship. The healing doesn't come from fixing the argument. It comes from realizing that the argument is just a temporary weather pattern of thought. When we stop poking the fire goes out on its own. So you're searching for reasons why it's not working. And here's the secret. Your partner is not the source of your feelings. When we understand the three principles, and by the way, this is not an understanding that you can get overnight. You really kind of have to sink your teeth into this. But anyway, when we understand the three principles, we realize that we are living in the feeling of our thinking, not the feeling of our circumstances. If I'm feeling resentful towards my husband, it's not because he didn't do the dishes. It's because I am currently entertaining a thought storm about the dishes or about his not doing the dishes. When we stop trying to fix the other person and start seeing that our upset is just a temporary lapse in our own consciousness, something miraculous happens. We stop being victims of our partner's behavior. We find our identity core, that grounded spirit I mentioned earlier, not by doing more inner work necessarily, but by realizing that our natural state is actually peace and wisdom. You have to go back to when you were a baby and remember your natural state. So it's only our cluttered thinking that gets in the way. Instead of anxious, preoccupied, you're just someone having an anxious thought. And thoughts change. That realization alone can save a marriage. So much of what John Gottman calls the four horsemen of the apocalypse are manifestations of bad thinking: criticism, defensiveness, withdrawal, otherwise known as stonewalling, and contempt, all stem from feelings that come from our thinking. Here's an example. When a person has contempt for another person, their thought is, I'm better than him. He is ignorant, stupid, doesn't have it together. Whatever the thought is. In Byron Katie's work, she asks us to take all our thoughts to inquiry. We get to really think about whether or not a thought is true and is absolutely true. When we ask these questions, we are forced to really think about the reality of a person, situation, or event. Defensiveness is another form of insecurity. Insecurity is a feeling that comes from a thought, and that thought is most likely, I'm not good enough. I don't measure up. Withdrawal comes from thinking, I'm not safe here. I will just leave the conversation and avoid participating because I do not have the ability to make her happy at this time. Again, it's another thought. One of the most profound realizations in the three principles is the fact of separate realities. We often walk into a room with our spouse and assume we are experiencing the same event. We aren't. Imagine you and your partner are sitting in the living room. You see a stack of mail on the counter, and your thought is, he's so irresponsible. He never stays on top of the bills. Your reality in that moment is one of resentment and heavy pressure. Your partner, however, looks at that same stack of mail and thinks, I'll get to that after I decompress from this long day so I can focus better. His reality is one of self-care and pacing. You aren't arguing about the mail. You are living in two completely different mental universes. When we don't understand this, we try to force our partner to see the truth, which is really just our thought-generated reality. But once you understand that your partner is literally incapable of seeing what you see when they are in a different state of mind, the four horsemen lose their power. You stop taking their separate reality personally. You realize they aren't being difficult. They are simply reporting from a different mental zip code. This leads us to a piece of advice that goes against almost every marriage seminar or book you've ever read or attended. That's the wisdom of silence. We've been told to talk it out and never go to bed angry. But if you are in a low mood, and all us humans get in low moods, talking it out is like trying to perform surgery in a dark room with rusty tools. When your consciousness is low, your thinking is distorted. You will say things you don't mean, and you will hear things your partner didn't say. In the three principles, we learn that our feelings are like a compass. If you feel high levels of urgency, anger, or contempt, as Gottman describes, that is your internal system telling you, warning, thinking is currently toxic. Do not engage. Sometimes the most spiritual, loving thing you can do for your marriage is to just go to sleep or go for a walk. Not as a way of stonewalling or withdrawing in a hurtful way, but out of a deep respect for the fact that your current thinking cannot be trusted. We don't need to work on the relationship when we're upset. We need to wait for the weather to clear. When your mood rises, and it always does because thought is fluid, you'll find that the problem you were ready to divorce over at 10 p.m. looks like a simple misunderstanding at 8 a.m. You didn't solve the problem. Your thinking simply shifted and the problem evaporated. When we stop trying to fix the separate reality of our partner and start trusting the wisdom of silence in ourselves, we drop back into our true identity. We move from the ego, the part of us that needs to be right, back into that deep friendship, chemistry, and shared values that brought us together in the first place. We've spent so much of our lives trying to fix our relationships from the outside in, changing our partner's behavior, changing our communication style, or changing our labels. But as we've seen today, that's like trying to change the movie by scrubbing the projector screen. It doesn't work. The true transformation happens when we look at the projector itself by understanding the inside out nature of experience and reconnecting with your innate wisdom. You'll stop reacting, start responding, and create a marriage rooted in emotional safety, intimacy, and lasting love. When you stop reacting, it's not because you're using willpower to hold back your tongue. It's because you finally see that the threat you're feeling isn't coming from your partner. It's coming from a temporary, flickering thought. And when that realization hits, the four horsemen simply lose their horses. You don't need to defend yourself against a shadow. As we wrap up today, I want to bring this back to the foundation I mentioned at the start. I believe a great marriage needs three things: deep friendship, chemistry, and shared values. But here's what the three principles adds to that foundation. Friendship flourishes when we stop judging our partner's separate reality. Chemistry returns when our minds aren't cluttered with contempt or criticism. Shared values become clear when we are both operating from our identity core rather than our insecure egos. You don't have to be a victim of your thinking, and you certainly don't have to be a victim of your partner's low moods. You are both just one thought away from a completely different experience of each other. Thank you for bearing with me on this new share. It's a simple understanding, but it has the power to change everything. If you found this helpful, I dive deeper into these concepts in my book, The Inner Work of Love. Now remember, your wisdom is always there, just beneath the noise. Trust it. Before we part ways today, I want to leave you with 3 questions to carry with you this week. Don't try to figure them out with your intellect. Just let them sit in the back of your mind and see what your wisdom shows you. The mood filter. Okay, the next time you feel a surge of resentment or the urge to criticize your partner, can you pause and ask, am I reacting to my partner, or am I simply experiencing a low mood thought right now? Just noticing the weather of your mind can be enough to stop a storm. Here's the separate reality lens. When you and your partner disagree, can you see that they aren't wrong, but are simply living in a completely different mental reality than you are in that moment? What would happen to your defensiveness if you realized they literally cannot see what you see right now? And this is the wisdom of silence. Experiment. The next time things feel heavy, urgent, or hot, what would happen if you just stopped? What if you trusted that your innate wisdom will still be there in the morning when the mental clouds have cleared? If you need a more thorough understanding of this concept, reach out to me at lisanellercoaching.com and fill out the contact form. I'm happy to have a conversation about this with you. Until next time, I send my love and encouragement for mastering the art of being together.